Welcome to Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. My name is Amber Ireland, and I'm here with my co-host, Jill Bucaro. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Guided by Third Wheel. We are excited today because we have another guest with us. We are joined by one of my most favorite people in the entire world, my best friend and my cousin, Taylor Mavrakos. She is not here because she is my favorite person. She is here because she is brilliant, number one. She has her own podcast. She does a lot of work with folks around a different kind of wellness, financial wellness. And as we start 2026, in our last episode, talked a lot about goal setting. We've been talking to each other a lot around goal setting. And what I know from me and from working with other people is a lot of people are thinking about financial goals. What do I want to do around saving? Maybe I've saved a lot of money. What makes sense around spending? Is it a year for big purchases like getting a house or a car? And wellness is so vast. We spend so much time here talking about emotional wellness, spiritual wellness, good boundaries with jobs and work and friends. But one thing we've never really dived into is financial wellness. So that is what Taylor is here to talk to us about today and help us all think about our financial goals for the year. So Taylor, please tell us about you and the work you do and how you found yourself in this space.
Well, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Jill. And Amber, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. My name is Taylor Mavrakos. I am a financial advisor based out of sunny Safety Harbor, Florida. I've been a financial advisor for about 10 years. Traditionally, I will work with young people, families, what we call retail. So people to people, not big corporations. I have some specialties where I can work with retirement plan counseling as well as being a certified divorce financial analyst. I stumbled into a few different specialties because I specifically had women that were coming into my office that didn't have access to the financial advising that they were looking for. Specifically, I had a lot of women going through divorce, and our field, financial advising, is predominantly male. So they had financial advisors that would side with the husband, and I had these women coming in my office that all of a sudden were cut off from all of their own assets, believe it or not. And then I really started to dive deeper into getting more credentials that specifically are looking to help those women, and then also access to financial education because we don't have it in school. And that's how I started my podcast, Tailored Wealth, which is wealth advice tailored to women.
I love that. We love a girl power endeavor around here. We could go so many directions with this, but what do you think are some of people's biggest misconceptions around financial planning? What causes the most anxiety? What makes people be unwell financially?
It's a couple things. A lot of the language around money has a connotation that it's for rich people, and that rich people are the ones that, if you think finance, if you think wealth managers, there's this idea that if I'm not rich, I'm not included, and that's not the case. But then what's been really interesting, especially with social media, is that a lot of people have capitalized on this get rich quick. So it's either there's these fancy people that have all this money, or there's this get rich quick hustle, hustle, hustle. And the reality is most of the people that get rich off that are the ones selling the programs. It's not the people that are actually buying those programs. Those would be the main things, is that people either think that they aren't included in finance, or when they have someone that is really speaking to them, it can get a little bit like MLM gimmicky.
One thing that I always think about, probably because of my background as a social worker, when I'm talking to people about doing the work, trying to heal our own trauma and be better friends, partners, people in this world, is that there is a certain amount of privilege that comes with being able to even think about that. When I think about the times in my life when I didn't have a lot of money and I was in the struggle, which, disclaimer, is nowhere near the struggle that so many people experience, there wasn't a lot of time and energy to be like, should I meditate? What kind of exercise should I do today? I didn't have as many choices about the kind of food that I could even put into my body. There is this murky underbelly of the whole self-help, self-care movement that feels like it's for rich people or people with some privilege. So if you are somebody, Tay, that doesn't have a lot of money, that just heard what you said, and it's like, well, I'm not interested in a weird get rich quick scheme. and I certainly don't come from money. How would I even go about starting to build wealth, set financial goals, things like that?
To back it up a little bit, what I've always held to as a core tenet in my life is you really understand something when you can explain it at a kindergarten level. And a big part of what I do, in order to be able to explain it that way, typically you have to know a ton about it to reduce it down to that simplistic, what is this about?
Sure.
And that's a lot of what my job is because I do believe anybody can understand these concepts. And the easiest one-liner that I tell anyone that I'm working with is picture a financial advisor. What does that mean? Imagine that a therapist and a personal trainer had a kid that was good at math. Now, I'm not saying that you guys aren't good at math. It's more of the concept of you've got the therapy piece, which is the more that you tell me, the more that I can help you. The more that you look holistically, which is where there's a ton of overlap with what we all do and that wellness space in general. It is holistic. The more that you share, the more we can help. And then there's the second piece, which touches on your question, which is the personal training piece. The answer is always the answer no one wants. That whether it's your mental health or your financial health, it's slow, steady, it's a discipline, it's consistent. It's not the crash diet, it's the lifestyle change. It's not the one therapy session, it's the little things you can do every single day. And a lot of those things can be free. For example, whenever I'm trying to get back on track, like now after the holidays, I go for a walk. Walking is free to do. Same with meditating or some of these different ideas. It's not the answer people want to hear. Because the reality is, we do live in a society where they're like, well, can I just throw some money at it and then it'll be done and we'll be all set? And whether it comes to your mental wellness or your financial wellness, that piece of the slow and steady, and to get to your question, what you're really looking at is where's your starting point? I will tell you that I've had typically young people that come in the office, they're like, I want to start investing. I saw on TikTok, if I put away $2 a day for however many days, I can retire on a yacht. I'm like, that's great. My first question always is, what does your credit card debt look like? And they're like, well, that doesn't matter because if I put away that $2 a day, then it'll be fine. And my job, I need to act in my client's best interest. And I will literally turn people away and say, get the credit card debt resolved and then start worrying about starting to save and all these different things. So to circle back to your question becomes an issue of where is that starting line for you? It might be we can't have a conversation about saving if we're still in debt, because what I tell every person who comes in that has credit card debt is I can't guarantee you I can make you 25% per year, but if that's what your credit card charges in interest, I can guarantee you that they're going to charge you that for the whole year. So that first piece, and this is free, is just awareness. We have our phones. If you have an app on your phone, start the discipline of every day checking your credit card bill. Even we start looking at all these programs now where they'll say, hire us and we'll make sure that we can comb through and see how many subscriptions you have. Sure, you can pay money to do that, or you have free access to be able to look and see, wait a minute, how many streaming services do I have? What is that subscription that I haven't used in a year and a half? And starting to take a look. It's little things that all add up to make a big difference. It's very similar to losing weight. It's just a million little things that you can do can make such a big impact over time. But that's not what we're taught right now. We're taught, how do we get it done in a week? How do I get boom, 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 instantaneous results? And that weaves back into that get rich quick thing. And unless you're a handful of people that sold Bitcoin at the right time, there isn't really a get rich quick thing.
So, for our listeners who maybe are living paycheck to paycheck or pretty close to, and they have credit card debt, because we know if we're living in that paycheck to paycheck realm, car breaks down, you got to have it fixed. You put it on the credit card, you pay for it later. And so they have that credit card debt, but they're also still worried about their financial wellness and they want to be putting away money for the future as well. And I know everybody's situation would be personalized to them, but in general, if you had the top three things that somebody could do that was in that situation to start paying down that credit card debt, what would they be?
Every time when you make a choice, before you make that choice, there's a minute where you could decide what's going to be best for you, where you can really take a step back before you swipe your credit card, before you decide to go out to eat instead of eating at home when you have groceries. And of course, disclaimer, I'm not talking about people where that's not an option for them. I'm talking about people that have some agency in how they're spending their money. It really becomes training yourself where you take that 30 seconds before you make an impulse spend and you say, hey, is this in my best interest to do this? And instead of getting Chick-fil-A for $12, you put that $12 on the credit card payment. payment. That doesn't mean your credit card payment's gone. You're probably gonna have to make that choice hundreds of times. And that's really what trying to train that muscle, that discipline piece. And again, that's free to do. And that's you deciding, where am I gonna spend my money? I tell people, look around your house. If you have stuff that you don't use, start looking at a Facebook marketplace. Start looking at a Poshmark if you have clothes. If you're an overspender, what does that look like? So taking inventory of your life, think of it as money that's sitting around your house. Earlier today, I had a friend say, oh, and there's an elliptical I have in my house that I never use. And she bought it a couple years ago for a New Year's resolution. And that elliptical might be worth a couple $100 on Facebook Marketplace. So start to look at that as $300 that's sitting in your house. If you take that money and you put it toward your credit card debt and you start to chip away at it, it can be really helpful.
A quick question that I realized I didn't know the answer to. It doesn't hurt your credit, does it, to make multiple payments per month? Obviously, you're going to have to hit that minimum payment by the due date. But if I went on every time I tell myself I'm not going to buy the Chick-fil-A, or I sold my elliptical on Facebook Marketplace and now I have $150 in my Cash App. If I were to transfer that onto debt, does that mess up how the payments and the credit scores and all of that works?
My immediate answer is no. I would double check with your specific loan that you have, but my immediate answer is no. Another
Typically, that's
thing
not.
that will take you 2 seconds is make sure you have auto pay for the minimum amount on your credit cards. Because if you forget a payment, that can ding your credit. It's not going to be for the full amount. Pause the podcast and go and do that and come right back, because it takes 30 seconds to put that on auto pay. And then at least you know that you're not going to have any late payments. We talk about, again, $12 here, $20 there. That's where checking that every day, you can start to see those results. Kind of like, again, as you're losing weight, if you take pictures of progress throughout. Same concept where all of a sudden you've made 5 great choices. You look on the credit card and you see that that number has gone down. And instead of owing $400 on the credit card, you owe $350. You get to really see that. And that motivates you to keep going.
That's such a huge piece of it too. As someone who is a bit of an avoider of all things that are causing me discomfort or anxiety, it can be very easy for me to clap the blinders on. I had a big issue this year where I had reached the end of my public student loan forgiveness. And of course, it came to fruition during the shutdown. And for weeks, I wouldn't log into my student loan website. I wouldn't look at it. I didn't want to think about it because I was so frustrated. I was so overwhelmed. It felt out of my control. When I think back to other times in my life when I've been stressed about money, I've gone weeks without checking my bank account. Hopefully nobody stole my info because they could have drained it and I wouldn't have even known. Do you think there's a good cadence of checking that kind of stuff, or a good practice? If somebody is trying to work that muscle, what might be a good practice for checking accounts, checking debt, checking savings?
It's interesting as you were saying that, because I'm a big fan of your podcast, so I listen to you guys all the time. And I think a lot of the important things that you talk about are really work-life balance, especially in the field that you all are in, and how people will go, oh, it doesn't affect me. It's all siloed. Everything's siloed in one place. And of course it doesn't permeate the rest of my life. And you're like, sure. And that's how money is. It's very pervasive. It's one of the leading stressors for people, leading stressor for marriages. And so when you're taking a look, think about checking your accounts in the same way you check in with your mental health. So in the beginning, typically when we start going to therapy, you see your therapist more frequently. If we're just starting this awareness stage with money, it's good to check it every day, especially if you're making those small payments. If you decide that's too much for me, I want to check it every couple of days, fine. But I do think you should develop a consistent, pretty frequent routine in the beginning. And then as you start to gauge your wellness and you have a better handle on it, then you can set a pace that works for you. Typically, though, I would say you want to be more diligent for at least the first 3 months, because if you have a quarterly auto pay, it's something you want to be mindful of. You have certain subscriptions that annually rebill, so I definitely think you want to keep it as a practice every month. But for those first 3 months, just to really eyeball those subscription services, I would check it pretty frequently. Do you need to check it 4 times a day? No, I do not. You can pick a time of the day when you're doing more of your ritualistic routine things and just make it a habit. We're all on our phones constantly constantly. If you have that app on your phone, just say, before I click Instagram, I will click my Chase app and I will see what's on there. I'm talking about 3-second things that you can do. And then, like what you all talk about on the podcast all the time, you'll know when you're slipping into bad habits. You'll know when you're starting to fall back into unhealthy patterns, and then you know to rein yourself back in, and you might have to go back on that more regimented for a little bit. Very similar in a lot of ways, which is why, again, I think there's a lot of overlap. Your mental health and your financial health and your physical health can be incredibly intertwined, and so can those habits.
Let's say I'm a person who I'm going on and I'm checking my bank account, I'm checking my credit card statements, and I'm trying to do it on a frequent basis so that I can see it. But every time I open that account, I am riddled with anxiety. I look at the amount of money that's in there and I have to pay these bills. There's not enough. It becomes a very tense situation for me every single. Do you have any advice on how to work yourself out of that so that you are able to at least look at your finances in a neutral way, opposed to it being something that you dread and causes you anxiety, like you were talking about, but affecting your physical and mental health?
I'll give the example of we're having this podcast episode right after the holidays because January 1st, the jig is up. We're done with the holiday drinks. We're done with the holiday food. We're done with the holiday spending. Our credit card payments for all those Christmas presents are due in January. I equate it a lot of times to weight loss, where when we're having eggnog and cookies for 30 days, maybe we don't go on the scale at all. And typically the reason why there's that jump start in January is because you've got the jig is up moment, which is why we're having this podcast. So to anyone listening who feels alone, the three of us are with you. So you're not alone. Yes. We're all there, but you have that moment. And that's typically what motivates people to start working out. And the trick is I always do my New Year's goals starting December 26th because it gives me way too much anxiety to wait till January 1st, because I feel like the whole universe starting at the same time stresses me out. So I do it that day. But when you're taking a look at that moment, Amber, that you're talking about, where the reality is, whether it's a number on the scale or it's a number on your credit card app or a number in your bank account, they're numbers and they give us anxiety because you can say whatever you want about the number. It's a number. That's the reality of where you're at. You do need that level setting moment that does hurt, that is hard, and figuring out what you can do around that. Something that takes away anxiety for me is a really long walk. I would probably budget that when I take a look at that number, then I'm going to go take a really long walk, or I'm going to go take a bath. And then from there, once you've got that reality level setting, this is where we're at. If that gives you a ton of anxiety in the beginning, what you might need to do is you might need to say, I'm going to keep a journal, and for 7 days straight, I'm going to do minus $12 for that Chick-fil-A that I talked about, minus $10 because I didn't buy the mascara at Ulta that I was normally would have bought. And then you check back in a week, so that way you can see those results and you can see a bigger result. You've got to check in with yourself of what you can handle and giving yourself treats that are healthy for you. Okay, when I check my bank account, then I get to go take a hot shower and nobody bothers me. Then I get to go hang out with my dog or my cat for 20 minutes. You're not going to go to the mall and spend money because that would be unproductive. But giving yourself something that you can do to soothe that a little bit and start to associate it with something positive. That's something I've seen work, where sometimes with weight loss, you don't check in every day. Maybe you check in once a week, but you keep a food diary. Same kind of thing. You could keep a financial diary of the key is just that slow and steady, no crash dieting, no crash financial constriction. Don't be like, well, I will not spend money for the next 30 days. That's not real. What does that look like? That middle ground.
We had somebody who did 60 strong with us last year. And one of her goals for the whole year was, I want to save more. I want to be a better spender, recognizing I probably spend when I shouldn't spend. But what she did for 60 strong, which was at the beginning of the year, is she said, I'm just going to write down in a journal everything I spend. Not that I'm trying to reduce it. I'm just trying to become aware of what my spending looks like. And she, of course, had the space and ability and privilege to come to this activity with curiosity. How am I spending my money? And then using that data, step 2 of the goal is, let me look at this, let me analyze this, and then start start to create some goals, because awareness is such a big piece of it. Credit cards and auto drafts and PayPal, and now they let you pay with Apple Pay, they let you pay with Venmo, you can pay however you want. And sometimes I think they don't even realize how I'm spending or what I'm spending it on.
It's almost like that's on purpose. Because I've done that where I'm like, oh my gosh, my credit card bill is so low this month. And I'm like, oh, but I forgot that it's because I Venmoed this friend for this dinner and this friend for this. And the same can be true of anything, whether it's your mental health or your physical health, where sometimes they'll say, do a log of what your current lifestyle is and then modify it. And sure, you can absolutely do that. And I want to say that it has to be sustainable. So for that person you're talking about in 60 Strong, I think that it really comes down to what your core beliefs are and what your core motivations are for these things. If it's something that you feel like you're going to be able to, quote, give up for 3 months, it's probably not going to work. You really have to get that buy-in internally of, I am doing this as a lifestyle change. Otherwise, it's not going to work long term.
And I think that goes back to the mindset too around all of these things. The mindset when you're dieting, the mindset about around what you're eating and why you're eating it. We find that people that are dieting, they will sometimes go and binge cake or cookies because they've been depriving themselves from it. And in doing that, it's the mindset that I deserve this instead of understanding that the healthy choices are also good. They weren't a punishment, that now you deserve this as the reward. And money comes in the same way. When we don't spend, don't spend, don't spend, and then all of a sudden we're like, well, I haven't spent anything in a month. And then I go out and make a $400 purchase on Shein. Did I need that? No. And I wasn't saving for that. It was just that I have been saying that I'm punishing myself because I spend too much money, and now I'm going to reward myself by spending too much money. And we have to get in the mindset of understanding that it's not the either or. There is a balance there, and understanding that we're always doing what's best for us, not in a punishing way and not in an over rewarding way either.
What everyone doesn't want to talk about is the dopamine hit you can get. Stress eating is such a big thing that we talk about in society. What we don't talk about is stress spending. And nobody wants us to talk about stress spending because we're giving all these corporations, we're giving them our money. And the reality is you can train your brain where you click that buy now and it's a hit. You get packages at your front door and then you feel shame, because how many of us have had a package at our front door and gone, I have no idea what that is. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, what was I doing? It was late at night. I could say the same story about you waking up and going, oh my God, it was the middle of the night. I ate a whole thing of Oreos I shouldn't have eaten. It's the same exact concept, whether it's a dress from Shein or it's a pack of Oreos. It's the same idea, Amber, of I deserve this. I'm rewarding myself. I am stressed, and therefore this is what I go to for comfort. And so you really have to switch that in your brain. The interesting thing is when you get that package at your door, it's a shame spiral that you go into. And then that feeds back into that loop. So you have to authentically break that cycle. And that's why different people have different vices. Some people overeat. Some people overspend. Everybody's got their thing. And for the overspenders out there, just to validate, that is real. And that is something that's really addicting.
Two things that have come up for me as we've had this conversation. And the first is the wild amount of parallels when we think about financial wellness and overall our mental health and mental wellness. Back in the beginning of 2022, I was at one of the lowest points I've ever been in my entire life. And I had this moment, something needs to change. And I started doing this. And everybody on this podcast is like, Jesus, Jill, we've heard this story 1,000 times, but I think it bears repeating because for 6 months, I journaled, I read books, I tried to meditate. Every morning I woke up and I did this shit. And there were some small benefits throughout. Certainly, I noticed my distress tolerance is better throughout the day. I feel a little bit more grounded as I begin to work. There were some small things that made me keep going, but it was still like, what is this all for? And it wasn't until 6, 8, 10 months down the road that I really began to experience these very serious shifts in the way I thought about myself and the way I thought about the world. And I'm talking about months and months of this painstaking, tedious kind of shit. But then it starts to pay off. And throughout our conversation, I've been thinking about that. And the second thing I wanted to say, Tay, is I am so glad you brought up that dopamine hit, because I think there are many of us, and by many of us, I mean me, that sit up on my high horse. I don't really drink to excess anymore. No, I don't use drugs. I don't smoke. I do not overeat often. Do I eat my feelings every now and then? But I do it in moderation. But I promise you, if I am having a hard day, if I am stressed, if I am feeling like nobody gives a shit about me, I'm scrolling. I'm looking at clothes. If I'm feeling bad about how I look, you know what will make me feel better is a new pair of jeans or a new pair of shoes or some fake hair or some fake lashes. And it's just that spending, you get the hit for that. And what do we always say, Amber, right? Is like awareness is the first part. So if you start to recognize, is there a pattern to this? Am I getting the hit I'm looking for from this? I think that's important.
And I wanted to mention this and you touched on it. I'm proud of everybody who deletes social media. Look at me, I'm not on social media. You can doom scroll Shein. You can doom scroll any site where you're buying stuff. So it's that pattern of, am I numbing out? Have you ever done this where you have TV on, you're scrolling, you put a bunch of stuff in the cart, and then you don't buy any of it? And you're like, what did I just do? I had a
That's my
rough
favorite
day. I was
activity.
sitting on my couch. I'm scrolling. Unfortunately, I'm here to tell you that even if you're not scrolling social media, it's so easy to scroll on all these different clothing sites and shopping sites,
I constantly have a $500 cart in Shein, always.
right?
It
It's
just sits there.
crazy.
I don't buy it. When I do buy stuff, I go through and I'll take out the stuff I don't
Uh-huh.
want, or I'll go buy the stuff that's on sale. I'll be discerning about it. But oh, yeah, I'm going through there. I'm going to have a cart in there just in case.
Know what it is about that hit, but overspending is a secret one. To your point,
Yes.
Jill, that is less judged. It's more under the radar. What you were saying too, Amber, of sure, that credit card debt's racking up, but nobody knows but you. And then
Mhm.
you're tormenting yourself about it.
Yeah. And I think there's a harm reduction piece to this because that's why I put things in the cart and leave them there, is because I used to buy everything in the cart. And so now I'm at
You're
a place.
improving. That's so
Right.
good.
So now I'm at a
Yeah.
place that I just put it there. I'm working on the delayed gratification because it's, do I need these things? Can I sit for a second and decide if this is necessary? Can I make room for this in my closet? If I don't need this stuff, then I just don't need to buy it right now. But it can still sit here. And if I need it someday, it'll be here for me to purchase.
Sure.
But I also wanted to go back to that mindset piece because something that has worked for me, I've been in all different financial states in my life. I've been paycheck to paycheck, not even paycheck to paycheck. I've been married twice, divorced twice. So there have been all kinds of different financial situations that I have found myself in. And something that really changed the game for me, and I will go back to when I'm starting to unravel financially, is when I spend money, I always think that I'm A, grateful that I have the money to spend, and B, that I like where it's going or I like what I'm getting out of it. So I always stop a moment and think about that. And when I pay my bills, because that's a huge thing. When you go through and pay your bills every month and you see that you ain't got nothing left in your bank account, it is a harrowing event. But when I pay my bills, I always sit there and think, I am so grateful that I'm able to pay these bills. Even if it's the minimum payment, it doesn't matter. I'm so grateful that I get to pay these bills because there was a point in time where it was more difficult to pay the bills than it is now. And that is something that has changed my mindset to where now when I look at my bank account, now when I go in to pay the bills, it's not as anxiety provoking. It's more of a, oh, I get to be grateful for the fact that I have this and I'm able to pay it to have the things that I want in my life. And it really makes me look at what I have in my life and whether or not I really want those things because I'm trading this money that I have for the things that I want. And money stopped becoming an enemy for me and it became the tool that I use to have the material things that I want.
Yeah. Building on that, something I will say with clients, when I'm investing money, I think of your money like soldiers. Am I deploying soldiers out to a place where they're never going to win, or am I deploying those soldiers out to succeed? To circle back to what you were saying about it being anxiety producing before, is I don't think we spend any time honoring when the money comes into our account.
Mm-hmm.
We're always obsessed with how much is going out of our account. When you start working out, and let's say you're on an elliptical and you see how many calories you burn, right? And then you look at some sugary snack from Trader Joe's that you could eat the travel size in 2 seconds. You're like, wait a minute, this is the same amount of calories as what I just busted my butt for 45 minutes doing. I can screw that up in 45 seconds. And all of a sudden, you again have that awareness piece of how hard it is for these things to come into your account. And that's the thing that all these corporations don't want you to realize. They want you to focus on spending it. Spend, spend, spend. It's got to go somewhere. Give it to us. But if you really take that second, which might be honestly a really good idea for people, is if you get paid on the 1st and the 15th, make sure that you're checking your account so you can see those dates that it hits your account. So on those days before you do that step I talked about where you say like before Instagram, I check my credit card. Those days, the first thing you do is you have a positive reinforcement of this money hit my account.
Taylor, no matter who we have on our podcast and no matter what topic we cover, I feel like we always come back to the same thing. It's about the routine. It's about changing our inner dialogue, our inner perceptions, the way we're thinking about it, the way we're talking about it. It's incorporating gratitude. It brings me back to what you said at the beginning. Why can't there ever be a quick fix for anything important? But that is just not the way being a human is in this world, it seems. This has been such a good discussion. You brought us back to the basics. Before we start to think about how much should I set aside for retirement? What does this look like? Should I put my money here? Should I pay off my car loan before my house loan? Before we get into those types of discussions, making sure that we have at least some awareness around our relationship with money, that we have some intentionality in the daily routine that we have when it comes to our finances, that really is the first piece. And I feel like we've been able to talk about some actionable things that people can do as they start the year off. So what I'm hoping you'll say yes to, Taylor, is that we can end this episode here and we can have you come back one more time and maybe delve a little bit deeper into some financy stuff or how people can prepare themselves if they want to get a financial advisor. How do they advocate for themselves in these sorts of financial situations? So would you be willing to come back with us one more time?
I would love to. And I would say to that point, to anyone who's ever painted a room before in their house, what we talked about today is just priming the wall. You got to put the primer on. And next time we can talk about painting the room and what that looks like. So yeah, I'd love to come back on. Thank you for having me.
We love this. Amber, do you want to pull a card for us? Some mindset and intention around financial goal setting this year?
Sure. Today we're going to pull from our Souls Coaching Oracle cards. So let's all take a deep breath together and release. And we will set the intention that you will receive exactly what you need from this card pull and maybe some clarity around your financial wellness. And we got the pleasure card.
Oh
Pleasure
man.
card. In this pleasure card, this lady is, you can't see her, but she's laying in a bathtub, in a bubble bath. We're thinking about financial wellness and we're thinking about abundance in general and how we're going to use the resource of money that we have in our life and in our world. We need to remember that we are allowed to use that money for things that bring us pleasure, but we have to do it in a way in which it is sustainable. It is not sustainable to go and have one pleasurable day and 29 terrible days in a month. Money is there and that abundance is there for us to be able to experience the pleasures that life has to offer.
I love that.
Awesome.
Yes, that's so true. And it's not the depriving myself of pleasure. I'm going to be thoughtful about the things that actually bring me true joy.
Money can be adversarial or it can be something that just helps you get to where you want to go. It doesn't have to be an enemy. It can be the tool. It can't make you happy and it can't make you miserable. It really is just a conduit to wherever you want to go.
Oh my gosh. That's a mic drop moment. We're going to end with that, you guys. I loved that. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. We would be honored if you would like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, be well.